A millionaire named Jonathan Rivers came home early from a board meeting, still holding the keys to his Bentley, and walked into his mansion to find a scene that left him frozen. His wife, Vivian, who for 3 years had been the picture of elegance and charm in public, was standing over 8-year-old Lana, the daughter of their longtime housekeeper Carmen. Her voice sharp and cruel as the terrified girl cowered in the corner clutching a broken vase with a cut bleeding on her knee. Vivian's mask of sophistication fell away as she scolded the child with disdain, claiming the vase cost more than her mother's yearly wages, and when she raised her hand to strike, Jonathan's voice cut through the air, shocking her into instant pretense. Ignoring her excuses, Jonathan focused on the child, calmly asking if she was hurt and what had really happened, and as Lana nervously explained through trembling words that she had only been helping clean when the vase slipped after a loud noise from the television, Jonathan began to notice patterns he had long missed: the fear in the girl's eyes, the subtle tension in Carmen on other days, the way Vivian's disdainful tone carried a hidden contempt for employees' children. As Vivian tried to manipulate him with polished words about discipline, responsibility, and social boundaries, Jonathan's anger deepened into clarity, realizing he had been deceived for years and that behind the perfect facade, his wife had been hiding a cold and calculating cruelty. When Carmen returned from the market and immediately sensed something was wrong, Jonathan saw the same quiet fear mirrored in her eyes, confirming what he had begun to suspect, that this was not an isolated moment, but a pattern of abuse masked behind wealth and privilege. As Vivian tried to dismiss the incident as a misunderstanding, her words revealed the truth of her mindset, a belief in hierarchies that diminished others based on status and background. And Jonathan understood at last that the real broken thing in his house was not the vase on the floor, but the trust he had placed in a woman whose true character was only now revealed. Vivian's words cut through the air with chilling clarity as she insisted that Lana would probably follow the same path as her mother, and that giving her hope was cruel, just another way of preparing her for real life. And in that moment, Jonathan realized he had not married Vivian at all, but a carefully constructed performance, because the woman standing before him now, speaking of hierarchies and appropriate positions, for an 8-year-old, was a stranger. When he asked what would happen if he disagreed with her approach, she laughed coldly, dismissing him as too busy building his empire to question how she ran the house, reminding him she had managed all domestic matters for 3 years, hiring, firing, setting rules, while he never cared to ask, and for the first time Jonathan wondered how many families had been harmed by her decisions. Her subtle threats about Carmen's job revealed the truth. Vivian used fear and insecurity as tools of control. From the kitchen came whispers as Carmen tended to Lana's wound, and Jonathan began to piece together how many such injuries, physical and emotional, had been suffered in silence. When Vivian sneered that he shouldn't make rash decisions based on a child's dramatizations, Jonathan stopped listening to her words and studied her like a strategist plotting moves, realizing he had been manipulated for years. Meanwhile, Carmen and Lana revealed the depth of the abuse: threats of false accusations, racist slurs, and the constant reminder to know their place. Jonathan saw clearly the trap Vivian had built, where financial ruin kept Carmen compliant, and he vowed to break it. He assured Carmen her job was safe and contacted Diana Rodriguez, a civil rights lawyer, documenting everything as Diana warned him that Vivian would escalate once threatened. Back in the kitchen, Jonathan promised Lana that she could trust him, even as Vivian, in the living room on the phone with her mother, revealed her philosophy openly, that people like Carmen and her daughter had to be kept in their place, that Jonathan was too soft, and that she already had strategies prepared to neutralize any interference. It was then Jonathan understood he was not just confronting cruelty but a calculated system of control, and he was determined to end it. Plans that were unlikely to be pleasant for anyone made Jonathan realize he was dealing with someone far more calculating and dangerous than he had imagined, because Vivian was not just a prejudiced woman losing control but a systematic manipulator who had spent 3 years constructing and executing a regime of psychological abuse. From the living room came fragments of her phone call that hinted she was already mobilizing outside resources for her defense, and from her confident tone, it was clear she believed neutralizing Jonathan would be effortless. What she did not know was that Jonathan Rivers had built a $500 million empire by never being naive about human nature, and when he chose to act against injustice, his response was always meticulous, precise, and devastatingly effective. While Vivian plotted on the other side of the house, Jonathan quietly documented every word, preparing a counteroffensive she would never see coming, because some battles are not won with shouting or open confrontation, but with intelligence, resources, and a precise understanding of how power truly works in the real world. Minutes later, when Diana arrived with 2 private investigators and professional recording equipment, Vivian was still on the phone organizing what clearly appeared to be a smear campaign against Jonathan. Her voice echoed through the house with a confidence that was about to turn into a nightmare. "If Jonathan tries to cause me trouble over this ridiculous situation with the employees, we'll activate Plan B," she laughed as she spoke. 3 years of documenting his outbursts of anger and emotional instability will yield a nice alimony settlement. Jonathan signaled to Diana, who immediately began recording. Carmen and Lana remained in the kitchen but could hear every word through the internal intercom Jonathan had discreetly activated. "Of course, I made up some situations to provoke reactions from him," Vivian continued. "Rich men are so predictable when they feel challenged. And now, with this whole story of defending the black maid and her little girl, I can paint him as unstable and unfit to manage his own fortune." Diana raised her eyebrows and whispered to Jonathan, "She's confessing to conspiracy to commit matrimonial fraud. Keep recording." But the best was yet to come. Vivian, completely absorbed in her phone conversation, didn't notice when Jonathan approached the room with a tablet in his hands and began streaming the conversation live to his professional LinkedIn profile, where he had over 50,000 contacts in the business world. "The funniest part is that I managed to make the black girl fear me so much that she wouldn't even dream of telling anyone," Vivian laughed. "Kids from that social class are so easy to intimidate. Just threaten a family's financial stability and she becomes completely submissive." The number of views on the live stream quickly exceeded 1,000, including several CEOs and business leaders Jonathan knew personally. Comments began to appear in real time, full of shock and outrage. "Jonathan will learn that there are consequences for interfering with my methods of household management," Vivian continued, now clearly lost in her fantasy of control. "And if he insists on defending these people, I will make sure the entire social elite knows what kind of man he really is. Someone who puts employees above his own wife." It was at that moment that Jonathan entered the room, still holding the tablet. "Vivian, dear, you have an audience." She turned, the phone still to her ear, and her face instantly paled at the sight of the device in his hands and the growing number of views on the screen. 3,200 people just heard your philosophy on domestic management," Jonathan said calmly, noting aloud that the audience included the board of directors of the Hamilton Charitable Foundation, where she had volunteered for 2 years. The phone slipped from Vivian's hands and shattered on the marble floor as her mother shouted frantically on the other end. Diana stepped forward, showing her credentials. "Vivian Ashford," she announced. "You're being formally notified of an investigation into psychological abuse, intimidation based on racial discrimination, and conspiracy to commit matrimonial fraud." "This is a misunderstanding," Vivian stammered, frantic to regain control. "You're taking my words out of context." Jonathan laughed bitterly. "Context," he echoed. "You just explained live to thousands how you psychologically tortured an 8-year-old for 3 years, using her skin color and her family's economic vulnerability as tools of intimidation." At that moment, Carmen entered the room holding Lana's hand. The little girl looked directly at Vivian and, for the first time in 3 years, there was no fear in her eyes. "Miss Vivian," Lana said with surprising firmness, "Mr. Jonathan taught me that people who hurt children are called bullies, and bullies are only strong when no one is watching." Vivian made one last desperate plea. "Jonathan, are you going to destroy our life because of one employee? Think about what you're doing." "I am thinking," Jonathan replied, advancing toward her with a controlled, relentless voice, "that for 3 years you built a regime of psychological terror in my own home and used a child as your victim. You have seriously underestimated both my ability to discover the truth and the consequences of your actions." By then, the tablet showed over 7,000 views, and the notifications would not stop. Messages of outrage, offers of support for Carmen and Lana, and several business contacts immediately severing ties with any institution Vivian represented. His volunteer services at the Hamilton Foundation have been canceled, Diana informed her, reading from her phone. The Malibu Country Club is revoking your membership, and apparently 3 different charities where you served are removing your name from all promotional materials. Vivian collapsed into an armchair, finally comprehending the magnitude of her downfall. In less than an hour, she had lost her social reputation, her positions in prestigious organizations, and her entire sense of identity built on status and power over others. The best part, Jonathan said, turning off the live stream, is that you did all this yourself. I just provided the platform for the world to know the real Vivian Ashford. Carmen approached Jonathan, her voice trembling. Mr. Jonathan, how can we ever thank you? There's no need to thank me, Carmen. I only regret that it took me 3 years to recognize what was happening under my own roof. Lana released her mother's hand and walked over to Jonathan. Mr. Jonathan, now I understand what Mom always told me about good people. They don't care about the color of our skin or how much money we have. They care about who we are inside. While Vivian sat in silence, processing the complete destruction of her social and financial life, one final notification appeared on Jonathan's phone. A reporter from a major local newspaper was requesting an interview about discriminatory practices in the domestic environments of wealthy families. Vivian's downfall was not ending, it was only beginning, about to become a case study in how prejudice and abuse of power can be unmasked when the truth comes to light. And the most ironic part was that she herself had provided all the evidence necessary for her destruction, underestimating the intelligence and determination of the very people she had spent 3 years trying to subjugate. Listen, if you've made it this far, you're already different from 99% of people who quit halfway. But don't stop here. Smash that subscribe button right now. Hit the bell icon so you never miss the next drop, and keep pushing yourself further every single day. This is Ordinary Fury, a channel built to turn ordinary effort into extraordinary results. Don't just watch. Be part of the journey. Join the community, share your progress, and prove to yourself what's really possible. Click subscribe, turn on notifications, and I'll see you in the next one. Your future self is waiting.